Senator from Oklahoma.
Ask unanimous consent the roll call in progress be vitiated.
Without objection.
Madam President, I want to take advantage of an opportunity to bring up a subject that no one's talking about now. Right now, everyone's been in the middle of of course, the Pope's visit and other things, and of course, what's happening with the Iran bill and the votes that we have. But I want to mention there's another very significant thing that's going on right now that we're in the middle of, and that's called the Pilot's Bill of Rights 2. And just to kind of put it into perspective, we had the Pilot's Bill of Rights 1, 3 years ago, last month, and it was one that people were not aware of. There are only 617,000 pilots in America, and so it's not one of these things that really gets an awful lot of attention. But the mere fact that those 617,000 people many of them are single-issue people. And a lot of people are not aware of, prior to the passage of the Pilot's Bill of Rights 3 years ago, that there's just one area left within our system where you are guilty till proven innocent. And that's exactly what we corrected with that bill. Just to refresh your memory, it was it gave the pilots who are accused of something the evidence that was used against them. I had a personal experience with it. It actually happened to me, and I was never sensitive to that until such time as I experienced it myself. So what we have right now, we're up to 64 co-sponsors in the Pilot's Bill of Rights 2. And one of the major part of this bill is something that is out there that doesn't really resolve anything. 10 years ago, as kind of an experiment, we put a sport pilot eligible exemption so that the pilots of small aircraft would not have to have what they call a third-class medical. A result of this was that after a 10-year period, the medical safety experience of these pilots has been identical to those with medical certificates. And so a joint study was made then, and following that by the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association and by the EAA, Experimental Aircraft Association, of the 46,976 aviation accidents over a 6-year period. Of those, only 99 had medical cause as a factor. That is less than 1/4%. And of those 99, none would have been prevented by the current third-class medical. So that shows that experiment worked, and there's no reason to have a third class. But so that people are aware that some changes have been made, I want to just briefly outline the modifications that have been made. The modifications required 3 things for pilots to qualify for an exemption. Now, the exemption we're talking about is the exemption from having to take a third-class medical every 2 years, or sometimes more extensive than that. The first of the 3 things, the pilots are going to have to complete an online medical education course. Secondly, pilots have to maintain verification that they've been to a doctor at least once every 4 years and certified that they are receiving the care that they need as directed by the physician to treat any medical condition that warrants it. And the third, pilot would have to complete a comprehensive medical review by the FAA. That would be applied to a new pilot. So they want to kind of establish a benchmark as to what a pilot's physical condition is. So the pilot would be required to take an online medical course every 2 years. This gives the pilot access to information on medical issues that may not be covered by a doctor in a medical examination, but that would have an impact on their physical condition to fly. For example, this course would make sure that pilots are aware of the impacts on interactions and over-the-counter prescription medications and how these interactions could impact their flying capabilities. And requiring pilots to take this course boosts aviation safety for the general aviation community. Now, the second pilots would need to complete an exam by their personal physician at least once every 4 years. And include a proof of their doctor's visit in their logbooks. This resolves a problem that most people are concerned about, that they would have to at least see a physician and be assured that they didn't have some condition that they didn't have prior to that. And furthermore, the pilots would be required to certify that they're under the care and treatment of their doctor for any medical condition that would warrant the treatment. Pilots would do this instead of visiting an aviation medical examiner about every 2 years, or sometimes even more frequently than that. Now, with this modification, we actually are encouraging pilots to be honest about their health and seek treatment for it. Right now, it's a terrible thing to say, but it's true that pilots are incentivized to hide any medical condition that they've from the FAA, including by not seeking treatment for it out of fear that the pilot might lose his wings. We don't want that to happen. People don't realize, people who are not pilots don't realize how significant that is, that you keep you don't want to be taken out of the air, particularly for some reason that is not justified. Pilots, like any individual, maintain stronger relationships with their personal physician, and this is a good thing that fosters an honest dialogue between pilots and doctors, which is something we should all want and something that is not there today. We want pilots to get the treatment that they need, and a medically treated pilot is safer than one who's not being treated. So for many pilots, the most burdensome aspects of the FAA bureaucracy is simply the constant churn of submitting paperwork over and over every 2 years or less, even when there has been no change in their medical status. This bill, as modified, gives pilots a break from the bureaucracy. The third requirement, I mentioned there are 3 requirements. The third requirement for pilots to receive the third-class medical exemption is to complete one FAA medical review, so that if a new pilot comes in, we need a benchmark. Where is that pilot? What is his physical condition today? So that as the time goes by, we can see how he might be changing. If someone does not have an existing medical certificate, such as new pilots have never gone through an exam, they would have to do it before they would fall into qualifying for the exemption. And by the way, this exemption, of the 617,000 pilots in America today, this is the one thing that concerns them more than anything else, is to have to go back and go through the type of examination that they are required, now that we know that the 10-year experiment of being exempt has worked. Now, there is one caveat. If a pilot flying under the third-class medical exemption is diagnosed with a severe condition, let's talk about maybe a heart attack, then they need to go through the FAA's special issuance process to receive medical clearance to fly again. But again, this would only be needed to be done one time. The ability of the FAA to maintain a stranglehold on pilots will be gone. Now, I'm confident that changes that will result in safer flying environment. And I want to reiterate that the Pilot's Bill of Rights 2 does not change the certification standards to obtain a pilot certificate. All pilots still have to possess a pilot certificate, pass the required practical tests and necessary check rides to demonstrate that they have the knowledge, skills, and ability to safely operate their plane. Further, this bill does not change the fundamental responsibility of every pilot to self-certify their ability to fly each time they get in the cockpit of a plane. I'm a pilot, and every time I get in the plane, I make sure that I make a conscious decision that I'm fit to fly. Everyone I know who's a pilot does the same thing. And again, it's not really, all of this is really not necessary when you go back and you realize that in 10 years of the experiment with a limited number of pilots, no changes. There's no difference between those who have and have not had the pilot exams. Now, with these changes, the third-class medical exemption, the Pilot's Bill of Rights is enjoying a greater level of support from members of this Senate. Support from the general aviation is strongly bipartisan. 64 of my colleagues are co-sponsors of this legislation. Half of those are Democrats and half are Republicans. Broad groups representing general aviation in the community and the pilot unions have declared their support for the bill. General aviation organizations like the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association and the Experimental Pilots Association and the General Aviation Manufacturers Association support the bill. The National Association of State Aviation Officials support the bill. The Allied Pilots Association, that's a union, and the Southwest Pilots Association, both of their unions that represent 23,000 pilots that fly for American Airlines and U.S. Airways and Southwest Airlines support the bill. Pilots of NetJets support the bill. The bill is a strong bipartisan support. And I urge all the members who support general aviation and all the economic activity of general aviation to be a part of this bill. One of the reasons I'm doing this today is that there's one of the two organizations, I'm not sure which one it is, it's either the AOPA or the EAA, is doing a major effort right now on to encourage the pilot population out there, to encourage their members of the United States Senate to get on as a sponsor of this bill. Again, we currently have 64 sponsors of the bill. We'd like to get, I can't think of any reason that we can't get everyone else. The same individuals who supported it 3 years ago should be there to support it. So I want to encourage those few members of the Senate who are not sponsors and to look at it very carefully. This is a lot. It may be that 617,000 people is not a lot of people, but it is 617 people. Most of them are single issue people. So it'd be really good to join in on this. This is something we now have demonstrated clearly that is not going to incur any safety hazards, and it's going to be a real godsend for pilots who don't want to go through this this bureaucracy every 2 years or more frequently in some cases. So the bill's out there, and it's one that I feel very strongly that we all ought to be able to work into into our floor use probably in the next very short period of time. With that, I do yield the floor.